Hello, traveller. You see the fire crackles before me, its tongues of gold licking the cool night air, casting shadows that dance, slow, deliberate, along the twisted trunks around our clearing. I sit cross-legged, lute resting in my lap, palms spread across silent strings, still humming from the last chord. Across the flames you sit, yes, you, road-worn friend, cloak raw with dust, eyelids half-lidded but bright with that pilgrim hunger all wanderers carry, a hunger for meaning, for a tale that steadies the spirit better than bread. I have seen eyes like yours in every province, on merchants who outran bandits, healers who outlived plagues, and once on a prince fleeing his own crown. They all asked the same silent question. Is there still hope out here by the last embers of the world? Tonight I'll answer in the only coin I possess, story. Not a mere tavern yarn, but a saga passed from my father's father, who swore he witnessed its dawn. It is the tale of Aelric the Starborn Knight. So settle your boots near the coals, breathe in the cedar smoke, feel how it warms the hollows behind your eyes. Let the wind carry away the weight on your shoulders. For a little while I will keep watch, and you may listen. I was but a boy when these events stirred the tapestry of kingdoms, my fingers still clumsy on frets, my voice unweathered by sorrow. Home was Erindor, a land of sloping, wheat-gold valleys and towers faced in sun-silver stone. Farmers said the god of dawn lingered longer over our fields because he loved the way the dew caught fire. Even now, after war and wanderings, when I close my eyes, I can smell the bread baked the day after harvest. Sweet, nutty, as if the earth itself were thanking us. Yet beauty, traveller, is a soft-glassed thing. A single crack and the shine spiders away. To Erindor's north sprawled the Blackwood, a forest so old its trees seem not grown from seed, but chiselled from night itself. Trunks spiralled like horns of ancient beasts, bark glistening with a sap that smelled faintly of iron. The elders swapped whispers after twilight bells, hushed, urgent, warning children that the wood drank courage and returned only shivers. They spoke one name whenever flames burned low. Malakar. He had once walked among our scholars in the High Library, stooped over scrolls describing the motions of comets and the mathematics of prayer. I recall glimpsing him through an arch when I fetched parchment for my father. A man tall as a cypress, black hair bound in a silver clasp, fingertips stained with ink. But an appetite grew in him that no mortal wisdom could sate. They say he looked beyond the last page of every book and found a crack in the universe, a void that promised a dominion in exchange for devotion. He accepted. With foreign power brimming in his veins, Malakar raised a tower of onyx where the Blackwood's heart beat darkest. A geometer of ruin, he etched sigils that leached sunlight, withered grain, and salted hope itself. I remember the day the change reached our valley. Crows perched on rooftops, silent as gravestones, and the scent of lilac soured in my nostrils. Laughter thinned, markets dulled, waves of quiet grief replaced festival drums. The king, a man white-bearded and wiser than most songs allow, dispatched companies of knights and circles of archmages. None returned. Their fates became lamentations sung by widows at dusk. One midsummer night, stars glittering like hammered coins, I slipped from my father's hearth with lute slung over shoulder. A boy's heart is half made of disobedience and half of awe. Mine beat loud with both as I chased the hush of open meadows. There, beyond the grazing commons, I found a hill bare as a knuckle, perfect for sky watching. I drew a slow breath. Overhead, constellations wheeled, the hunter, the broken crown, the salmon run. Then the heavens shuddered and a star tore free, a white spear sizzling through the dome of night. It trailed argent fire, humming as if it had a voice only the still could hear. I stood rooted while the bolt vanished over the ridge with a sound like distant thunder collars. Curiosity strangled fear. My legs moved before my mind could protest. Downslope, across dew-slick grass, I crossed a brook whose surface steamed where star heat had brushed it. A crater smoked ahead, glowing faintly blue. From its depths stepped a figure clad in mirror-bright plate. Aelric. Light spilled off his cuirass in Argentine ripples, yet somehow it didn't blind. It felt cool, like moonlight distilled. His sword, a slender leaf-shaped blade, sang a chord that made my humble instrument tremble in its satchel. He surveyed horizon and spoke, but his words seemed addressed to unseen choir, not to a dirt-smeared boy. I am Aelric, born of the spheres, summoned to break the chain of Malakar. Lightning scraped my spine. I ducked behind a willow stump, breath shallow. He turned toward Erendor's distant towers, shining silver in wan moonlight, and he walked, me, a shadow flitting behind hedgerows, living a secret no child should carry alone. By dawn's grey hush, Aelric crossed the drawbridge into the royal city. Cobbled streets fell quiet as his footsteps chimed on stone. I slipped through the outer gates, weaving among awe-struck citizens. In the great hall, tapestries sagged, their colours leached by despair. But when Aelric approached, candle flames reared higher as though greeting kin. The old king rose, robes heavy with stitched constellations, and hope flickered behind cataract eyes. He offered troves of ruby and land broad enough to ride a fortnight across. Aelric bowed once. A horse that knows forest paths, a sky reader's map, and your blessing, no more. His humility rang louder than any vaulted hymn. The king granted the request with tears bright on wrinkled cheeks. I, dizzy behind a marble pillar, watched scribes ink the decree. When Aelric mounted a dapple grey steed in the courtyard light, cheers gusted from balconies. Radiance lanced through gloom and made dust motes sparkle. Upon impulse, I followed the procession out the northern gate. Boy chasing a myth, lute banging against my ribs. The blackwood greeted us like a mouth swallowing a candle. Heavy silence, soil damp as tongue, roots knuckled above ground to snare ankles. The deeper Aelric rode, the more his armour's glow muted, as if the forest sought to smother it in moss. I stalked a dozen strides back, boots whispering on loam. At dusk we made clearing. Aelric knelt, dug a trench, and coaxed a small flame that burned sapphire, a star's memory of fire. From saddlebag he drew a whetstone and began slow circles along his blade. I lay prone behind fern, mesmerized by the rasp-shush rhythm. Minutes, or hours, passed before forest shadows flickered, coalescing into slender smoke-grey figures. They hovered just outside firelight, murmuring in voices like wind inside catacombs. Failure, Aelric. dust of worlds. Even stars die cold. Their susurrus seeped under my skin, stirring images of my mother weeping after I broke my first lute string, of the harvest blight, of graves piling along the churchyard wall. My breath turned shallow. Aelric rose in one fluid motion. He did not brandish sword, only touched 2 fingers to hilt. Then, voice steady as bells in dawn mist, he answered, "Stars die, yes, they die, making light." He drew, the sword arced, no clash rang, only a single pure note like crystal struck by silver mallet. The shades unraveled into dew that smoked away among ferns. Silence returned, deeper but oddly lighter, as though some oppressive humidity had drained. I hugged the forest floor until my heart slowed. That night, Aelric slept sitting against an oak, sword across knees. I dared creep near enough to see his face in starlight. Younger than I imagined, expression almost wistful. I wondered what skies had birthed him. We journeyed 3 days. I learned the Blackwood was a library of dreadful sounds, sap dripping like low drums, unseen wings brushing bark, roots groaning when wind pressed trunks. Each evening, Aelric planted camp. I kept to shadows, surviving on berries and puddle water. The 3rd dawn smelled of rust. Birds ceased their sparse chirrups. Then the beast came, a chimera of antlered skull on bear-like shoulders, hide sheathed in onyx scales. It emerged onto the path, blocking all forward motion. Its breath steamed black, and pits where eyes should glow pulsed Malakar's crimson glyph. I bolted behind a stump, bile in throat. Aelric stepped forward, sword raised in salute. The beast lowered massive horns and charged. The ground trembled, leaves spiraled. At the impact point, Aelric slipped aside like moonlight dancing on river, blade scoring a glowing line across obsidian scales. The creature bellowed, vines whipping to snare legs. Twice it lunged, twice Aelric shifted, weaving a pattern I later learned was the Star Weaver form, modelled after the cosmic wind's flow. At last he leaped, planting a boot on the beast's knee-like joint, driving sword into the void glyph. A flash of blue-white flared. I smelled hot iron, winter wind, fresh lilies. Then shockwave rolled outward, flattening bracken. When glare dimmed, only a pile of grey cinders remained. Aelric knelt, placing hand where heart of creature had been, whispering a benediction none but the earth would hear. I exhaled a sob, half terror, half exaltation. Heroes were real, and they walked under uncertain stars. As gloom relented, we came upon a cluster of thatched huts cramped under ancient oaks. Smoke rose weakly from stone chimneys. Gaunt villagers eyed the night's glow with riddled hope. Over them worked Leora, a healer of maybe 20 winters, hair black as wet raven feathers, eyes holding embers unextinguished by misery. I hid at the fringe, watching her lay cool leaves on Aelric's shallow cuts, wounds that wept thin threads of starlight rather than blood. Night settled. Villagers gathered around a central pyre gone to coals. Leora spoke. Children stolen by shadow, crops crumbling to dust, dreams invaded by Malakar's laughter. As she spoke, Aelric's gaze softened, glow around armor dimming to gentle moon sheen, as though empathy demanded gentler light. He pledged deliverance, but asked nothing. Leora insisted on guiding him, claiming knowledge of secret tracks and, a glance sideways, of herbs that hush curses. The villagers pressed amulets of carved willow into his palms, tears shining as dew on winter grass. I realized then that heroes do not only slay, they carry around the faith of fragile folk when those folk can carry no more. That night I camped beneath a cartwheel, scribbling Leora's quiet courage into my tattered journal. Her words would be chorus to the song I still hoped to write. 2 dawns more we travelled as a trio, Aelric glowing softly at vanguard, Leora pointing out safe routes, and me, a secret caboose, nibbling travel bread pilfered from village stores. We reached a gorge cleft so deep the bottom bred its own mist. A stone bridge spanned the void, each slab scarred by twisting runes. Midway stood a hooded sentinel carved of basalt, eyes hollow, mouth open in perpetual question. As Aelric set foot on the first slab, the statue's voice boomed inside skulls rather than air. Name the flame which darkness cannot quench. Leora's brow furrowed. I felt cold fingers spider across my heart, the void's whisper of futility. What flame can darkness not devour? Even stars die, even hope dims. But I remembered something. Children in Erindor, even when food scarce, lit candles and set them in windows so lost travelers could find hearth. The candles fluttered in wind, yet refused to die until dawn. Those flames were not wax, they were hope itself. Leora stepped beside Aelric, voice clear. Hope is the flame that darkness cannot quench. The runes sheathed on slabs flared gold. The sentinel bowed, and the stone path rearranged itself into safe symmetry. Aelric turned to her, armor brightening, offering a brief smile worth a bard's library of songs. My throat burned with unshed chords. As tower rim rose above black pines, jagged spire gnawing the sky, Malakar's magic thickened the very air. My lungs pulled tar-sweet vapors. At dusk we made camp in a ring of leaning birches. Aelric cleaned sword, while Leora ground bright petals into poultice. Night left us little rest. Malakar's sorcery wove. Visions. I saw myself slumped over broken lute strings, father shaking head in shame, my songs lost to silence. Leora dreamt her village burning, children screaming. Aelric saw constellations plummet, their light drowned in a sea of ink. I know this because, just before dawn, we each woke gasping, their faces mirroring my own terror. Aelric broke the silence first, voice low as tide pulling away. Fear shows us mirrors. Courage chooses which reflections to keep. He placed a hand on Leora's shoulder, and though starlight flickered weakly, it was enough. I realized true leadership isn't shining without doubt, it's standing luminous. Despite doubt. Malakar's tower loomed, black architecture gnarled like spine bones, windows bleeding violet aura. As Aelric and Leora approached, glyphs crawled across basalt, forming barbs. I clutched my lute behind a fallen log, heart thrashing, cage wild. Inside, corridors writhed with shifting geometry. Leora's herbs glowed, wreathing them in green aura that repelled shadow leeches slithering along arches. 3 stories up, a hall of shattered mirrors tried to trap them in infinite reflections of their own fears. Aelric sliced through glass illusions, each shatter releasing muffled screams turned quickly to hush. At the summit platform, crystal columns caged a pulsating heart of stolen starlight. Erindor's collected hope. Before it floated Malakar, robes of twisting void, eyes blazing with void fire, voice a serrated whisper. You cannot win, Starborn. The void is eternal. You are but a spark. Aelric raised sword, glow intensifying. Battle erupted in flares of argent arc and shadow lash. Malakar conjured chains of negative lightning. Aelric parried with arcs of living radiance. Leora stood back, chanting runes of binding taught by crone hermits. Green spirals laced shadow, stalling curses. Each strike rattled tower stones, each respite punctuated by Aelric's ragged breathing. Hero, yes, but mortal vessel nonetheless. Finally, Malakar thrust a spear of void aimed for Leora's heart. Aelric intercepted, blade shattering spear, but taking corrupt energy into breastplate. He staggered, light dimming. Malakar laughed, a sound like glass ground under heel. Summoning last strength, Aelric lunged, driving sword through Void Mage's rune-etched heart. Simultaneously, he pivoted blade, angling tip into the crystal of stolen hope behind foe. Light returns to its keeper, he whispered. Sword pierced crystal, white nova erupted, pure, searing, yet strangely gentle. My hiding place below exploded in brightness. I felt warmth fill bones as if winter finally conceding to spring. Malakar's scream shredded to echo, then silence. Tower foundations quaked. I fled downward, shielded by wave of calm rather than debris. Outside, pines bent away as energy climbed skyward, forming a Tavernu star, bright enough to cast shadows at noon. When dust settled, I found Leora cradling Aelric amid rubble. His armor shimmered faint as candle's last breath. His skin radiated soft glow, edges already loosening into motes. Leora's tears gleamed starlit. "You saved us," she murmured. "No," Aelric replied, voice barely wind. "You saved me, reminding a star why it mourns the dark." He placed 2 fingers against Leora's brow, a benediction, and then exhaled, his body unstitched into swirling sparks that climbed the sky, kissing the newborn star. I fell to knees, tears streaking soot on cheeks. We escorted Leora home. Under the newborn star's glow, wheat sprouted green in barren furrows, well water cleared, laughter floated above rooftops again. The king proclaimed Feast of the Falling Star to be celebrated each midsummer. I remained months learning Leora's herbcraft, composing songs tempered by grief and hope in equal share. When, at last, I slung loot for new roads, villagers lined the lane, pressing bread, kisses, whispers. "Carry our thanks." Leora gifted me a sprig of star-blessed rosemary, scent evergreen, to remind me courage has flavor. So here I sit, friend, with cheeks warmed by present embers, but eyes reflecting a star born of sacrifice. These hands still remember the tremor of that lute chord the night the sky broke open. My voice is older now, edges roughened by wind and years, yet the core remains a boy in a meadow, stunned by impossible light. Do I believe in heroes? I believe in choices, hundreds of small, stubborn choices to stand in light even as darkness encroaches. Aelric shone brightest because he chose moment by moment to remain human in the face of cosmic dread. Leora, grounded and mortal, unproved hope's flame burns in the soil as fiercely as in the heavens. Rest now, weary traveller. Let the rhythm of coals lull your pulse. Let the star above trace old patterns through your dreams. Should Malakar's whispers ever graze your thoughts, remember, there is a flame darkness cannot quench. It sighs in children's laughter, in healers' hands, in the quiet chord of a bard's last string. And perhaps, if you lift your gaze before dawn, you'll see Aelric's star guiding pilgrims yet unborn. Until then, sleep sound, friend of the road, I will keep the watch